250 years ago, America sent a message to the British Crown. We're done. And for the last 7 decades, one woman had a front row seat to what happened next. Queen Elizabeth II met 13 American presidents, from Harry Truman to Donald Trump. She watched us stumble and recover, overreach, pull back, lead the world, and lose that thread. She never said much publicly, but Susan Page spent years finding out what she really thought. Susan's the Washington bureau chief of USA Today, a former colleague of mine, someone who has covered 8 presidential administrations and 12 elections, interviewed 10 presidents from Nixon through Biden and Trump, and written 4 New York Times best-selling biographies about Barbara Bush, Nancy Pelosi, Barbara Walters, and now the Queen and her presidents, which lands just in time for America's 250th birthday. On the anniversary of that divorce, I wanted to ask her, what did the Queen see in us? Susan Page, welcome to the Love Journalism Show.
Hey, Darren, it's great to be with you.
So you've covered Washington longer than most people have been paying attention. And I've got to ask you, as we get ready to celebrate and the fireworks go off, what does America at 250 feel like from where you sit?
Well, it feels like a time of real tension and peril. It's more divided than at any point during my adulthood, during my lifetime. And there's more friction and division, especially in Washington, than I've ever seen before. And I don't think it's entirely clear what the next steps will be. Huge turmoil in both political parties, and the conditions are pretty ripe for a new political party to emerge, even though that's difficult to do in our system.
Does it feel like the country will be celebrating? Does it feel like half the country will be celebrating from your perspective?
You know, it's not I was a very cub reporter for the bicentennial. I was a local reporter for Newsday working on Long Island. And that seems like such a simple time now because it wasn't particularly partisan. People celebrated, even though there was a pretty fierce presidential campaign going on then between Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter, it didn't seem to intrude. This one is very different. We see President Trump doing something that the previous presidents at big milestones didn't do, that Grant didn't do at the centennial and Ford didn't do at the bicentennial, which is to make it a lot about him. And we've seen that with his visits to the Dakotas. He's planning to go to Mount Rushmore and came back from Teddy Roosevelt's new presidential museum there and talked a lot about himself and how he should be celebrated.
So yeah, I mean, this president last year was the military parade around his birthday. Obviously, since then, the whole city's been remade, and you try and make your way around the city, and there's construction crews everywhere doing things. We obviously are seeing him obviously planning to set off a lot of fireworks on Saturday in Washington, more than I think ever has been done on the planet. And he's obviously remaking, the golf courses, all of the buildings around there. What do you make of Trump's Washington redevelopment as a journalist who's been covering this city through multiple eras?
Presidents try to leave their stamp in different ways. Lyndon Johnson sought to leave his stamp with Great Society legislation. And I think Donald Trump, a former real estate guy, is determined to leave his stamp on real estate, on local real estate, on the Kennedy Center and the reflecting pool and the Oval Office and the new ballroom replacing the East Wing. I think it reflects his desire to make his tenure unmissable for future generations.
Over my left shoulder, you can see I've got the Get in the Spirit of 76 sticker hanging up there with Snoopy on it. So looking back 50 years, I want you to kind of, let's ask you a question for the ages here. Think ahead to 2076. I was 1-year-old back there in 1976, but in 2076, we'll hit 300. What do you think we're going to need to reckon with as a country before we hit that next milestone 50 years from now, based on what you've seen for the last 50?
I find it difficult to predict what's going to happen in November much less in 50 years. And you know, we've had turbulent passages before and come through them. A civil war, the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, all times where there was a lot of push and pull in the U.S. political system. But I think it is hard to predict where we'll be in 50 years. Maybe we'll look back at this and say, boy, that was a turbulent time and now it's all smooth sailing. Or maybe there'll be some fundamental changes in the country, in our political system that are just hard to see. You know, you see that with the immigration policies that President Trump has adopted. That has the potential to change the complexion of the country. And maybe it'll do that, or maybe the next president will reverse those policies. I don't know, Darren, are you making predictions 50 years out yourself?
No, I'm not, except maybe the Dolphins might finally win the Super Bowl by 2076, we hope. Let me ask you this. I mean, if you could look back at your 1976 self, I mean, what would most surprise you about where we are here in 2026, 50 years later?
It would be the fierceness of the divide in American politics. It's not that we weren't divided then, and when I remember when the first presidential campaign I covered in 1980, the concern among Democrats that Ronald Reagan would be this catastrophic president because he was so very conservative, and that seems now kind of naive because the divisions between the two parties, the divisions between Democratic Socialists who are winning some primaries and the MAGA folks who are also winning primaries. I mean, that's just a divide with a kind of breadth that maybe we haven't seen since the Civil War.
Let's turn to Susan's book, The Queen and the Presidents. I'm holding up a copy here for the world to see. And fabulous timing to come out with a book like this as we celebrate 250 years. So reading through the book, one thing that kind of like blew my mind, and I guess I just needed to kind of get there in my head, in 1953, as the Queen is being coronated, a very different technological age, and you write about how the news crews from America had to fly back to the United States with the film footage. CBS and NBC, I dug a little bit deeper, were actually racing their planes across the Atlantic to get the film back. And it was called Operation Pony Express. I'm curious, did you know that story going into the research? And what do you think that race says about the relationship, between America and that moment, that we would go to such great lengths just to see that footage?
Yeah, you know, it was really the start of something. It was really the start of a television age, I think. It spurred TV was relatively new. It spurred the sale of television sets because so many people wanted to watch this event. And it goes to the fascination Americans have had with the British monarchy in general and Queen Elizabeth in particular. You know, the limits of technology then had come up a couple of years earlier when she made her first visit to the United States as princess and was speaking at her arrival ceremony with President Truman by her side. And it was carried live on radio, but only as far west as Omaha, because that's as far west as you could then carry live radio.
While those planes were racing across the Atlantic, there was a 24-year-old reporter in London named Jacqueline Bouvier who was filing for the Washington Times-Herald. She'd get married to John F. Kennedy 3 months later. You've now written the book on Elizabeth and her American presidents. I'm wondering, did you ever sit with that moment for a moment of a future first lady covering a future queen, neither of them yet knowing what they'd become?
It's one of the amazing things about Elizabeth's life is how people pop up in it before they're famous. You know, for instance, the first future president she met, she was 12 years old and she met a college senior named John F. Kennedy, whose father happened to be the U.S. ambassador to Great Britain then. She had tea with him, and he mentioned her in a letter to a friend, Lynn Billings, saying that he had had tea with the Queen Mother and her granddaughter, Princess Elizabeth, and with whom he had made a great deal of time. I'm never entirely sure what that meant, but that was true throughout her life, that she would encounter people before they were president, before they were big famous figures, and then encounter them again when they achieve that high office. And meanwhile, she is the steady monarch, right? 70 years, an unbelievable amount of time. And it's the thing that gave her life so much depth, that she had so much time dealing with world leaders of all sorts.
And I mean, isn't that partly she serves in World War II, and so many of our future presidents would have been serving in World War II as commissioned officers or as soldiers or what have you. So that would be a place where they would cross paths too, right?
Yeah, she was the first female royal to serve in the armed forces in the armed forces there as a truck mechanic and driver. Something she did, she'd come from the palace every day and go in her uniform and go to work. And it was the World War II, definitely the formative experience of her life, when Great Britain was under such threat. And here came the Americans and saved the day, something she never forgot.
So she came to America to commemorate the 350th anniversary of Jamestown, and then she was back not too long ago for the 400th as well. She dies before the 450th commemoration. But let me ask you this: what do you think she would have made of America at 250 in this particular moment right now?
Well, we know she was baffled. We know this because I interviewed President Clinton, and he told me that when she saw him in Australia, at the time Trump was rising in American politics, she wanted him to explain what was happening in American politics. She did the same thing with President Obama at their last meeting in 2016, where when the Obamas kind of swung by England to wish her a happy 90th birthday. It was the last time they saw each other. She wanted to understand what was going on in the United States. And I think that neither President Obama nor President Clinton had fully satisfactory answers to that.
I really want to ask you the next question in a fake British accent, but I'm not going to do it to avoid any protocol problems. But I'm going to ask you, she was genuinely amused about American informality, the directness, the disregard for protocol. Can you give me some example? Give me an example, a moment where you could actually see it happen.
Yeah, because Americans kept hugging her and touching her. And, this is rule number one with royals. You don't touch them. You don't even shake their hand unless they extend their hand first. But you find when she was during George H.W. Bush's administration, she came and visited a housing project in Baltimore. And Alice Fraser, the woman whose home she was visiting, had been warned, do not touch her. That's the rule. And Alice Fraser had told the advance team, of course, I understand. And when Queen Elizabeth walked into her apartment, Alice Fraser gave her a big hug, a bear hug. And the pictures of it show the Queen looking a little surprised and not hugging back. But she, with one exception, I think, didn't take offense.
Tell me about the scones.
The scones. So President Eisenhower, with whom she had a very warm relationship because he had been the general who had come to help England combat the Nazis. But when he was president, she invited him to Balmoral Castle in the Scottish Highlands, which is a rare invitation. It's the private retreat of the royals. And they went and had what amounted to a kind of a picnic or barbecue. And at it, she herself made what's called drop scones on a griddle, on an outdoor griddle. And Eisenhower said he liked them. And I found in the Eisenhower library the recipe card she then filled out and sent to him describing how to make drop scones. I'm not sure Eisenhower ever made them, and it made a great quantity of drop scones for which she apologized.
Such a rich detail. Have you tried the recipe yourself?
I have not.
I'm tempted, and it's in your book. Highly recommended if someone wants to give it a swing. So let's talk about Trump and the Queen. You talk about Trump watching the coronation as a 6-year-old with his Scottish mother, and quote saying everything had to be to do with the Queen. He told you his dad was born in the Bronx, German immigrant parents, but his mom really loved that ceremony, the beauty. And Trump actually, as you write in your book, traces his love and gold and grandeur, the things we were just talking about, directly to her. Talk about that conversation. How did that conversation happen between you and Trump, where you would get him to start talking about the Scottish mom, about a Scottish mom and the coronation?
Yeah. Well, he adored his mother, and while his father didn't care much for British royalty or for gold and gilt, his mother did, and it's one of his. He says it's one of his earliest childhood memories is sitting on that couch in Queens, New York, and watching footage of the coronation of Elizabeth. It was when he became president. It was very important to him to go see the Queen. And it took some doing because the British were a little taken aback. After initially inviting him to a state visit, the British were taken aback by his immigration and other policies and tried to slow walk it. And he was very insistent he wanted it to happen. And he had first in 2018 tea with the Queen. And then in 2019, he had what he really wanted, which was a state dinner.
And on that state dinner, at it in your book, you write about how he asked the Queen about her coronation. So he's talking about his memories. And she responded and told him that you can only survive as a monarch if the people love you. I guess that would be sort of the off with the head sort of allusion there. But what do you think she was doing there? Was she just answering Trump, or do you think she was trying to, like, Jedi mind trick him in some way?
Well, no one could be more skilled at small talk than Queen Elizabeth, right? No one has, in the history of the world, I bet, has engaged in more small talk with people, many of them tongue-tied, than Queen Elizabeth. And the remarkable thing about the conversation with Trump, I think, was how she handled Trump's aggressive questioning on two issues. One is he wanted to know who her favorite president was. Well, that's something the Queen, other presidents might have wondered. Surely no one else had ever asked her or pressed her anyway. And she refused to answer, but she dodged it in a all the presidents were great. Oh, what about Nixon? He said, oh, Nixon was wonderful. How about Reagan? Yes, of course. So, so she didn't answer. He was very admiring of the way she didn't answer, the way she dodged his questions without offending him. And he told me that he later was told by someone else that she did have a favorite, and it was him.
Of course it was. Oh, the Queen did tell Trump that people have to love you to survive.
Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah.
he heard her?
Well, so maybe that was a message to him, but it was probably a statement of fact for her. The British monarchy, no guarantees it continues forever, right? 1,000 years so far, but there's an anti-monarchy faction in London. There are questions about whether the power, influence, standing of the monarchy is diminished with her death. We think we'll have a short tenure with King Charles, given his age, and then King William, a very popular figure, and his wife Kate. So she's saying what is true, that if people didn't respect her, didn't love her, didn't think she was worth it, that it would threaten the very standing of the monarchy she represented.
So you're reporting on 7 decades of moments. That's so many, but you got the Jimmy Carter kiss, Ronald Reagan on horseback, President Bush's wink. Which one, when you actually reported it out, turned out to be more than just a good anecdote?
Well, the Obama tea when she was 90 was quite extraordinary. And I say that because of what Obama told me about it. Because he told me not only was she very curious about what was going on with Trump, she also expressed her view on Brexit. And that's something she had not done in public and was the subject of huge speculation in the British press. And she was clearly skeptical of Brexit. And she was critical of how Prime Minister Cameron had handled Brexit and how it had gone to a vote of the British people. She didn't think that was wise unless she knew what was going to happen. Well, of course, what happened was the British people supported it, and they withdrew from their close ties with Europe. It's turned out to be, of course, pretty serious error in judgment, I think calm voices would say. So for her to express those candid views that she had never expressed in public, and to do that with an American president, to criticize the British prime minister to an American president, I thought that was quite extraordinary. And when the book was published, and there was a British edition of the book published as well, that got some attention in the British press.
Let's turn a little bit away from just the Queen to talk about America and the world at 250. we've just been talking about, I guess, our original first enemy in the United Kingdom and Britain, and who we fought the American Revolution against. But throughout the 20th century, America was built on a specific set of relationships that were all former enemies turned our partners: Germany, Japan, and even Vietnam. Eventually, how fragile is that architecture right now at 250?
No, it's pretty fragile. I mean, President Trump has been very critical of NATO. He's reduced the traditional U.S. role with NATO. He's questions whether we would respect Article 5 of NATO, coming to the defense of any NATO ally that was attacked as though we had been attacked ourselves. So that's, I think the post World War II architecture is in a state of transition. And one thing, when President Trump tenure ends, it's not like, even if you elect a new president that wants to supports NATO and who embraces the post-World War II architecture, you can't flip a switch. There are alternative alliances being created that don't involve us by countries who don't see us now as a reliable partner, even Canada and Mexico, with whom we have such a long and friendly relationship. So this is going to be different. Maybe that's natural, maybe it's natural that over the passage of time, things change, alliances change. But I do think, just as we're in flux with domestic politics, we're in flux with international relations.
Let's move to some of your book writing. You've written 4 books: Barbara Bush, Nancy Pelosi, Barbara Walters, and the Queen. All are about power. All are centered on women. Was that a conscious choice, or did you kind of look up one day and realize what you'd been doing?
Well, I kind of fell into it. When I met with Matt Latimer and Keith Urban, who are my book agents, when I met with them the first time, the books I suggested were mostly about male presidents, because I'd covered the White House for so long. And it was Matt Latimer who said, "What about Barbara Bush?" And that was how I ended up doing the first book about Barbara Bush. And then once I did the second book, I kind of had a pattern. No woman would be surprised to hear that women are less likely to have biographies written about them than men, even when they have comparable lives. So there's a lot of running room in covering women who were powerful and consequential and made a difference, but have been underestimated. And that is the thread that I've tried to look at through these 4 books.
Really quick on Nancy Pelosi. She leaves Washington at the end of this year. What are we going to lose when Nancy Pelosi leaves Congress?
Well, you can agree with her or not on policy, but we haven't seen her likes in terms of a legislative leader, a master tactician, since Lyndon Johnson. So we're going to lose that. Now there'll be Republicans and conservatives who'll be very glad. And of course, she's lost, once she stepped down from the speakership, she was no longer in charge the way she had been for so long. But she has a remarkable, of everyone I covered in Washington, I think Nancy Pelosi has the shrewdest sense of how to get power and how to use power of anyone I've covered.
Yes, I would say the same. Watching her take down John Dingell right after Obama's victory in 2009, I've never seen anything quite like that. A man who had so much power, and she was able to take the air out like no tomorrow. It was quite.
He was surprised as well.
Oh yeah. What's the book you haven't written yet that you think about?
I'm trying to think of a book. I'm open to suggestions. I'd like to do a 5th book, but you got to, when you do a book, you got to really want to do it, because it like rattles around in your brain for a couple of years. So it can't be something you're like lukewarm about. So I am in search of a title, and I would welcome suggestions from you.
We will talk offline on that one for sure. And I welcome my readers. If you've got an idea that you think Susan Page might want to explore next, please drop a comment at the bottom of the podcast. Let me ask you this. You've been in this business for a long time. What do you want younger journalists to know that nobody told you?
The one thing that surprised me in journalism is how day 1 and day 1001, how much alike they are. The skills you learn in your first job out of school are the skills you'll use for the rest of your life as a journalist. And the people you meet, a lot of them will be the same people. So there's more of a continuity than I ever thought there would be.
Hmm. Yeah, never say anything mean to the interns is one that I love to pass on, because that intern's going to hire you in a couple of years.
You hope.
What did this work cost you that you didn't expect?
Well, I mean, I submerged my political points of view. I mean, because if you're a mainstream journalist, not an opinion journalist, no one cares what you think about the healthcare system the United States should have. And that becomes a muscle you kind of use. So now I have, that's that. So that's something that's different. It's not that I had such brilliant policy ideas, but when you choose journalism, that's part of the discipline of it, I think.
Hmm. Next question I got is something that I ask everybody. The things that we carry as journalists, what's been in your bag, literally or figuratively? Is there a thing that you have carried with you that you couldn't work without?
Oh, how interesting. Um, the thing that I try to carry with me is a sense of humility about how sure you ought to be that you've discovered the truth, how careful that should make you to make sure you explore and include other points of view, even if you think they're not so serious or not so powerful, because you don't know. And every election night, I am surprised by what happens and reminded that I should be humble about what I think is going to happen.
Has this job ever made you sick? And I mean that honestly, like literally sick.
Oh, it made me tired, but no, it's never made me sick. In fact, quite the reverse. It's been a privilege and not a moment's regret of choosing journalism.
Hmm. That's a great segue to my final and capper question. Did journalism actually love you back, Susan?
Yes. I mean, I never thought I would cover the things I've covered, had the opportunities I've had, traveled to the places I had, more beyond any expectation I ever had.
Hmm. Susan Page, it's been an honor to have you. The Queen and Her Presidency is the name of the book, and Her Presidents, excuse me, is the name of her book. Grab it, give it a read before the end of the 250th anniversary. Thank you so much for joining the Love Journalism Show.
Thank you, Darren, and congratulations on having this show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that's the way it is.